Every story begins with a spark. A single page, a single voice, a single chapter. Welcome to Chapter 1, where our authors take you on the journey in their own words. Settle in, listen closely. This is where the adventure begins.
Hello, my name is Ann Shepphird, and I am the author of the Destination Murder series of travel mysteries. Today I will be reading to you the first chapter in the first book in that series, which is Destination Maui. Chapter 1. Appearances, as they say, can be deceiving. I had learned this more than once in my 10 years as a crime reporter in Los Angeles. I was coming to understand the concept again after returning to my hometown of Carmel-by-the-Sea, California, and taking a new job as the travel columnist for Carmel Today magazine. And I was about to discover it yet again when someone turned out to be a murderer on my first press trip to a luxury resort on the Hawaiian island of Maui. I realized there's a lot to unpack. Yes, I'm starting with a travel pun, but I really had been doing a lot of unpacking lately, both physically and mentally. I guess that's what happens when you don't expect to return home and make a career transition at the ripe old age of 34, huh? Let me explain. My name is Samantha Powers, but everybody calls me Sam, and I returned to Carmel when I got the call from my Uncle Henry that my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's-related dementia and psychosis. Talk about your appearances. The diagnosis was something seemingly no one had seen coming, and yet the truth is, the clues had been there for a while for anyone really paying attention. It wasn't just that the clues were somewhat subtle, it's that no one, especially me who had avoided visiting or really even calling very often after the death of my mom a decade earlier, had taken the time to put them together. The thing is, my dad would have put them together. Solving mysteries, criminal and otherwise, was something he did better than anyone I knew. But not the rest of us. I mean, maybe we should have figured it out when Uncle Henry told me that my dad had been waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to discuss the crossword and adjusting the thermostat in the family home the two brothers shared to abnormal temperatures. Or when my dad called to wish me a happy birthday a month early and then spent a good 15 minutes arguing with me over the date. There had also been reports of him being spotted wandering all over town. But as the former police chief, that wasn't completely out of the ordinary either. We all chalked these new and strange occurrences up to his ongoing grief after losing my mom and his retirement from the force. And since I was more than 300 miles away, and the two of us had always had a somewhat prickly relationship on the best of days, I will admit I brushed a lot of it off. Maybe I wanted to. Maybe I was dealing with my own messes. Spoiler alert, I was. And a little nervous, he would put the clues together that my life wasn't exactly as it seemed. Then, one day, Uncle Henry couldn't reach my dad from his office at the Monterey School of Law. He rushed home and found him lying on the bathroom floor talking to invisible people. That's when I got the call that I should drop the seemingly successful life I had built in Los Angeles and come home, at least temporarily, to help Uncle Henry handle it all. My first month home was kind of a blur. At least it was a scenic blur, from our home overlooking Carmel River State Beach. A much better view, I will say, than my studio apartment overlooking an alley in Venice Beach. Each morning, I would wander out from the studio my dad had built me above the garage when I was in high school to the kitchen in the main house to fix myself a cup of coffee. On the kitchen table, I would find the mound of documents and notes Uncle Henry had left of things for me to tackle while he was off teaching his law students. Most days, I would ignore the mound, take my coffee, look out at the ocean, and mentally thank my great-grandparents for choosing this gorgeous, enlarged by Carmel standards, spit of land to build their house. In those days, the area was considered the Boondocks, based on the old picture hanging on the wall of their groundbreaking, which was surrounded by open space. While the lots had filled in since then, we still had one of the best views in town. The sight of the happy people on the beach and the sound of the waves always helped soothe me. That and the garden that framed my view. My mom's garden. If it was warm enough, I would take my coffee out and sit on the bench in the succulent garden my mom created and ask her just what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. The answers were about as clear as those I got from my dad when, later in the day, I would visit him in the memory care facility Uncle Henry and the very nice social worker at the geriatric psych ward had found for him before I came home. Typically, our visits would start with him scrutinizing me, like I was one of his suspects from when he was the police chief. Then, as the realization of who he was talking to would dawn, he would start with the usual question. Following a case? Our way of communicating tended to involve sharing whatever cases we were working on. Whether it was me telling him about the story I was working on, where the soon-to-be ex-wife of a famous actor had died from a mysterious fall down the stairs at their house up in the Hollywood Hills. The husband did it, we would say in unison. Or him regaling me with the tale of a billionaire who had gone missing from his oceanfront home. The wife did it, we'd said for that one. For the record, we were right on both occasions. But now, neither of us was working on a case. So I would wait a bit after answering no to his question. Then he would furrow his thick gray brows and squint his eyes as another glimmer of recognition hit. So, you're home. I'm home. Why? For you, Dad. I don't need your help. You kinda do, Dad. What will you do? That's what I'm trying to figure it out. Good luck with that. Yeah, good luck with that. What was I going to do? I could go back to Los Angeles and come back to visit on the weekends. But the truth is I wasn't sure that's what I wanted. I had hit a wall in Los Angeles, both personally and professionally. My on-again, off-again relationship with a manipulative asshole, I believe that's the technical term, was finally, really, for sure, ended after the 6th attempt. At least I hoped it was over. He had an unsettling ability to draw me back in, time and time again, against my own best interests. Being back up in Carmel would help solidify the split, as now I had those more than 300 miles between us instead of having to walk past him at the sports copy desk every day, like I did at the newspaper. That was another place I was ready to take a break from. I was a lot, burned out from writing 3 to 4 short pieces a week about the darkest underbelly of society. I had originally loved the idea of being an investigative reporter, so getting the job at the Times after finishing college at UCLA was a dream, exactly what I said I wanted. But working the crime beat at a daily newspaper ultimately ended up being a lot of writing stories about people at their worst. And that can be really depressing, you know? So I hit a wall. As we all know, if you hit a wall often enough, it hurts, which made my return home and the open-ended hiatus from the newspaper also a chance to regroup. Not, run away. Not at all. But as my dad so eloquently asked every time I visited, what was it I was actually supposed to do? Luckily, the answer was not far off. It involved Uncle Henry's bulldog Buster, the latest in a long line of English bulldogs and bulldog mixes I had grown up with. Carmel being a particularly dog-loving community, it was practically in the city charter that you had to have a dog. Uncle Henry loved bulldogs since his college days at Yale and was active in the local bulldog rescue group, so that's what we had. Buster, I have to say, was a godsend. Not only a good pal to have around the house while Uncle Henry was at work, Buster also proved to be especially popular with my dad. As one of the few beings, furry or otherwise, other than Henry and me, that my dad still remembered, Buster became my sidekick on the days I walked over to visit him at the center. The routine I fell into was to walk Buster over to the assisted living center and, as I entered the lobby, let the little old ladies, and they were mostly all ladies, sitting by the door ooh and ah over him. They would bring out their silly puppy baby talk voices as they reached out to pet him and told stories about their long gone but still beloved pets. Carmel's reputation as one of the dog-friendliest cities in the country meant that they had all had at least one. Buster was used to the attention. He ate it up, wagging his big old brindle-colored butt back and forth in happiness as they pet him. Then, when I passed the locked door that let me into the memory care part of the center and finally reached my dad, his face would brighten at Buster's appearance. "Buster!" he would shout as I sat down and took in his appearance, which seemed to get smaller and more grizzled every time I saw him. A far cry from the large and somewhat forbidding presence he occupied during my childhood. Then we would go through our usual patter. "So, you're home?" "Yep, I'm home." "Why?" "For you, Dad." "I don't need your help." "You kinda do, Dad. You kinda do." "What will you do?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." "Good luck with that." It was there I learned to pivot. "Doesn't Buster look great?" "Buster!" His blue eyes would brighten as Buster sauntered closer, sat his big old butt down on my dad's foot, and looked up with his slobbery face showing a contorted smile. After a period of trial and error, I had learned that late afternoon, around 4:30, was a particularly good time to visit. The residents were starting to get ready for dinner. Yes, they ate very early, which meant that my dad would be seated in his spot in the dining room, and I didn't have to worry about tracking him down or waking him up from a nap. After our visit, Buster and I could then continue our walk down to the beach, take a left on Scenic Road, and head back home. One day, I decided it might be nice to take a walk in the opposite direction and head up into town. It was a beautiful sunny day after a dreary few weeks of constant fog and drizzle, so I thought it might be nice to extend my walk and see what was happening in good old Carmel-by-the-Sea. I'd kind of been avoiding town and a lot of the people in town since I got back. The nice weather and a decent visit with my dad made me think maybe it was a good time to change both patterns. I was glad I did. As it was there, I got the offer that would lead me into the world of luxury resorts and Hawaiian hospitality. Oh, yeah, and murder. That is the end of chapter 1. Thank you very much.
The first chapter has been read, but the story has only just begun. Join us again for more voices, more worlds, more Chapter 1.